have you here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi, Vaibhav. Hi, Kelly.
Yes, thank you so much for coming and joining our live. My name is Vi, and so I'm here in New Delhi at the moment. And so I have a talk show. I always interview people. I lead the talk show. So that's what I wanted to do today, is to interview you about your experience in this format.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I don't know if you can... But yes, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to have you here. And so we appreciate you donating your time. We know you're very busy, especially since COVID has really hit pretty hard. We know that you're making a big difference with the pandemic. And so I know it's not easy for you as a doctor to come and join this type of thing when you have a lot going on in the medical community. But before we start with questions, could you explain a little bit about yourself?
Right. Yeah, so thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, Vi. So am I supposed to call you Vi or Vaibhav?
What's that?
So am I supposed to call him Vi or Vaibhav? That's his full name, right?
Yes, I do. This is just my nickname. All my friends and family call me Vi,
Yeah.
so that's fine. You can feel free to call me Vi today.
Yeah. Right. So I basically, my name is Dr. Yuvraj. I am now popularly known as Dr. UV. And so basically, I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. I'm an infertility specialist. As far as COVID goes, honestly speaking, I only deal with COVID that concerns pregnancy and lactating mothers, breastfeeding mothers, which is like a very, like a very precious and, a very vulnerable group, so to speak. And yeah, so that's what it's been. And these last couple of months have been tough. Luckily, since the last few days, too early to kind of predict, but we've seen a little bit of breather in terms of the cases. So we're just hoping it's good times from now on, hopefully.
Yes, I totally understand. I know it's very challenging. And the impact, I mean, what do you see for mothers, especially? What has been the impact on pregnant mothers and recently born babies? Do you mind sharing a little bit of your experiences and examples of what you've seen?
Absolutely. So, so last year during the first wave, for some reason, pregnant mothers and kids were kind of protected. Now, maybe the virus at that time was not infecting them, or maybe we were more guarded in terms of, our lockdowns, if we're not coming out. It's difficult to say. But this time, the second wave has just hit bad when it comes to pregnancy and kids. The experience has definitely been that we've seen an exponential rise of pregnant females being infected and, in fact, having severe diseases these days. Maybe it was the new strain of virus, the mutation that made, pregnant females more vulnerable, the kids more vulnerable. There are a lot of scientists who said that, the virus is the same, but since, everyone else started getting immunity, the kids and pregnant females were, kind of kept protected in a shell. So now they were the most vulnerable, because now they were coming out and the virus found like a new bait for them to, get infected. So yeah. Pregnancy and kids were difficult. Also, there's a huge issue with pregnancy because, if you're not pregnant and you have COVID, you are kind of deteriorating or you need oxygen, you can still be managed at home. We have seen hundreds of people being managed at home with oxygens in their houses and everything. But when it comes to pregnancy, that's not an option. So you need a hospital in case you deteriorate. Or, for example, if you're going to deliver a baby, you can't deliver a baby at home, right? You have to have a bed at that time. And that was something that pushed me towards working more for COVID, is because I had patients who were not getting bed and who were in labor. Saying all that, general physicians, COVID are usually treated by general physicians, but those doctors really, really find it difficult and are scared of treating pregnant patients because pregnant patient is a completely different game. And that's why it became very important to safeguard these people. So honestly, during the first wave, I was also very scared. I was not really, a lot of doctors were not handling COVID cases. We were staying away from it because we were scared. We wanted to protect our family. We were working in private setups. But the second wave was just crazy. I mean, for me, I just couldn't stay back. I had an incident where a patient was being referred to me from a different city. She was pregnant, and unfortunately, she was not getting a bed in that city. And I was getting these calls, that we have to somehow find an oxygen bed for her. And we did manage to find one in the hospitals that I used to work. And then when she was being transported, she just deteriorated on her way. We had to divert her to a different hospital. And unfortunately, the baby and the mother, it was a 24-year-old mother, couldn't survive. And I think that was the day it hit most hard on myself. And I decided that, I have to do something about it. Along with that, just being in the hospital was not enough. So then what I decided was, it just started off as, I used to come home every day from work, and I just decided, so I had like 4,000 followers. I said, whatever, I'll educate these 4,000 followers however I can. And that's how the journey of social media started. And then, yeah, it just kept on going.
Wow. Such an impactful story. That's so awful to think that the mother and the baby lost their lives. I mean, so you are working currently full time in the hospital, or do you do overnight shifts, or what does your schedule look like now that the second wave of COVID has hit?
So now it's a little relaxed. So for us, so basically I'm not, so COVID, so you need to understand. So COVID is basically treated by chest physicians. So they are these specialists COVID. So for us, what we did is we created a special area and a ward in a hospital only for females who were, one, pregnant, and second, who were breastfeeding. So that was something that we created so that no pregnant female hopefully could not suffer a loss because just they were not having a bed. So we were not admitting anyone else in that area. It was only for pregnant females. And and then we started a free help. So of course that was also very overwhelming. We were getting I was getting like hundreds of messages a day, which were doubts on vaccination, on what treatment to be given, whether to breastfeed or not, whether they were pregnant, what to do. Some were COVID, some were scared of COVID. So then I got together a team of a few doctors across the country, and we started a free helpline. The COVID work was something that was in the daytime because until and unless it was an emergency, if it was an emergency, a delivery, of course, it was at any time. And then post, say, I used to get free by around 8. And mind you, apart from the COVID patients, there is your routine set of patients. You cannot deny routine sets of patients because people, again, you have pregnant females, again, you have infertile patients who are already in their treatment. So you can't just say no to non-COVID patients because pregnancy is pregnancy, right? So that was one part of the job. And then there was the COVID part of the job. And then probably at post 7 and 8, we used to sit and start replying to all the DMs and all the helplines that we were getting, questions that we were getting. And we made it a point for almost alternate day to get a doctor, so because I'm a doctor, I have doctor friends who were working with COVID. So we used to do a live every day so that, most of the people, because it was impossible for us to type and give responses to everyone. So we used to ask everyone to come at 9 o'clock for 1 hour and we'll be able to take as many questions as possible. So the routine was, the daytime was more of shifting between COVID patients, if any, delivering, and the normal patients, of course. And plus I teach. So I teach in medical colleges. So I have that part of medical students and everything. And then the later half was more about awareness, helplines, and yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, education is so important, and social media sharing is a way to do that very effectively. It's very important to have that information. I'm very inspired by you and the other doctors who have worked together in this community, and nurses who have worked together to educate us. So when it comes to the government, and you mentioned the vaccines, I know here in India, we've had a awful situation with the hospitals being full. how do you manage all of that? I just, in terms of what is the system looking like right now?
So right now it's a little better. The vaccination spots are opening up. The cases are going down. But if you're going to ask me this question, say for example, 20, 25 days back, honestly speaking, most of us doctors were not thinking about all this. Because, the moment you start thinking about what the government is doing or what it's not doing and what's not happening, it was already a little bit of a gloomy time. You were seeing patients being lost. I mean, apart from working, I had my friends, my relatives who were being COVID positive. In fact, I had a toughest time to find a bed for a very close uncle of mine, who I was very close to. In spite of me being a doctor, having great friends, I had friends who had COVID hospitals, but I couldn't find a bed for him and oxygen for him for 2 days. And he was really complicated. So I think for me, I just never had the time to sit and think what was going right and what was going wrong in terms of what the government was doing. Of course, I had my moments when I used to see Kumbh Melas and political rallies, and I used to be, for a second, I used to be like, gosh, what is going on? I wish this would stop. And, the next second we were just working. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I mean, time is precious and you're literally working to save people. So you don't necessarily have time to think about what the government's doing. I mean, do you think that the vaccine is the answer? Do you think that it will solve this issue?
Absolutely. I mean, when I say it's the answer, I mean, it's the strongest tool right now in terms of medicine that we have. We don't have anything else. If you ask me today, doc, I mean, it's been 1.5, I mean, more than 1 year. If you ask any doctor today, tell me like 5 treatments of COVID. We don't know, right? We don't know how to treat COVID. If we knew how to treat COVID, so many people would have not died, right? So if you talk about plasma therapy, you talk about remdesivirs, you talk about any form of drugs, we were just trying to help in the best way possible. We still don't know whether they were working or not. But one thing we know for sure is that, there is some level of protection that vaccine is providing. And today, something is better than nothing.
Yeah. So for the vaccine, in terms of protection, will that also be effective for pregnant women? Because I know that there are some pregnant women who do not feel comfortable because of the chemicals that they suspect maybe in the vaccine. And so how does that work when it comes to pregnant women? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So that's a very important question. And, since the vaccines are very new, I think for science and medicine, it always works on comparison of risk and benefit. You have to see whether the risk outweighs the benefits or the benefits outweighs the risk. And as of today, COVID is such a risk at higher level, and especially for pregnancy because it's a very, very vulnerable state. Compared to that, the vaccines are much lesser a risk. I wouldn't say risk-free, but it's much, much lesser a risk. So when you compare about risk-benefit ratio, I think that's how people need to understand why they should be susceptible to taking a vaccine. And one more thing, remember anything in medicine has side effects. A simple antibiotic has a side effect. So if you talk about pregnancy, there are a list of drugs you can take, there are a list of drugs you can't take. Even in the list of drugs that you can take, you can have severe reactions. People have died of taking aspirin, people have died of taking paracetamol. So, but that doesn't apply to the larger population, So even when it comes to vaccine, we're talking about side effects and we're talking about people dying. And I understand that every life is important, but at the same time, we're talking about like 100 million vaccines against 1,000 people dying. I mean, we don't want the 1,000 people to die, but should that be a reason for 99 million people to not take a vaccine?
Yes, yeah. I think it's best just to, like you said, we want to save as many people as possible. And I support what you're saying. I mean, you're absolutely right. And So do you think now that, we're in this, I've heard some rumors that there's a third wave coming soon, that you guys are expecting maybe in October or November after the second wave hits, and it was more dangerous than the first, that there is the possibility that a third wave will come and will be even more dangerous. What is the plan? How will we confront this if this happens?
So, I wish we knew whether the third wave was going to come or not. I mean, we can predict, right? So the predictions are strong, and I understand that because it's so what I mean to put COVID in a very simple terminology. COVID is again a lung infection. It's a viral infection. We all know that every winter we have influenza. People have sore throats. People have cold nose. Winters always have a wave of influenza, and influenza viruses keep on changing. So that is why the influenza vaccines keep on changing. So COVID is going to be very similar. It's not going anywhere, It's going to be there. There will be a third wave. There might be a fourth wave. There might be a wave every year. We don't know. But saying that, what we do know is, even in the second wave, we know that vaccinated people were still quite protected than unvaccinated people. We knew that people who were taking care of themselves, maintaining proper COVID protocols, etiquettes, washing their hands, wearing a mask properly, was still much more safe. So, I mean, we know how to now kind of tackle COVID. So I hope by October, if India has a huge vaccination drive, if we have now learned, I mean, now in January, I used to see 10 people and 5 were not wearing masks. But now if I see 10 people, I hardly see one person who's not wearing a mask. So if you're still vigilant, we keep that protocols moving, I'm sure we might be able to. I'm not saying the third wave will come. I think I'm very hopeful if we might be able to avert that. I mean, look at America. They've asked the people to stop wearing masks. If they are suspecting a third wave, they would have never asked people to stop wearing masks. So I look at Israel. 70% vaccination, people have stopped wearing masks. Look at New Zealand. I mean, they're having music concerts with 50,000 people coming for a concert. So I'm sure it can be fought. Countries have fought, and so can we.
Right. Yes. I think we can do better and we can achieve the same. So basically, you just mentioned a good point. In the US, they have announced that after getting vaccinated, it's no longer necessary to use a mask after vaccination. So with that being said, it seems that the advice from doctors that I've seen has been the opposite of that. So it's very confusing. There's a lot of conflicting information in the media. So can you clarify where we stand on that?
Yeah. So I agree. I'm not. What I mean when I say that the government has asked you to stop wearing a mask, I think it's more a sense of protection and a sense of security. So it doesn't mean that you need to stop wearing a mask. I mean, if you're wearing a mask, no one is going to fine you. If you're wearing a mask, it's something that's only going to help you. But the fact that a government official can stand on official stand before the world and make a statement proves that they are ready to fight if there's something wrong. Second, they know that they've done enough work to protect their population. So I take it as a good sign.
Yeah, and I think that psychologically, if we consider the fact, if we say you get vaccinated, you don't need a mask, it's also convincing for those that are hesitant. They may think psychologically,
Sure.
Okay, let me go ahead and get that vaccine so I don't have to wear my mask.
Yeah, I think, and that will even work more in India, because yeah.
Right.
But we are far from that stage.
Yes, I agree. So with hospitals now, what is the situation looking like? Are we seeing an improvement? I know that there were more and more cases happening during the second wave, but do you feel that with any kind of therapeutics, medical treatment, I mean, what is happening now in terms of the numbers at the hospitals?
No, definitely. We are seeing a decline in new cases, of course. So, uh, I deal with a small group, which is the pregnant group. So so when you deal with a niche small group, you tend to get that idea earlier. So I probably within 14 days back started getting an idea because we were getting fewer and fewer new cases. And then, of course, I had friends who were taking care of ICUs and proper COVID hospitals. So then we started talking to them and they realized that, yeah, slowly the new patients were decreasing. So if you ask an ICU doctor, he might still not see that bit of a drop because ICU patients are going to take time, for ICUs to get low. Because one, existing COVID patients are still going to go to ICU once they deteriorate. Existing ICU patients are going to take time to come out. So they are going to see this kind of breather a little later on. But people who deal with outpatients, people who deal with small groups of different specialized patients will see it earlier. And that's how. So honestly speaking, I have not seen a new pregnant female get infected. I mean, in my hospital, get infected and get admitted in the last 7 days. I've not seen a new case. We've had previous cases who are coming and being treated, but not a new one. So I take it as a good sign.
Yes, I completely understand. And that's a great way to put it, that every doctor has to work in the best interest of their patients and look at what they're dealing with their patients. So you mentioned that you have friends and that you basically are kind of working with a team of other doctors. So with that being said, have you found that some doctors oppose your views or prefer to take a different approach, or do you feel like you're all on the same page when it comes with when it comes to the team that you're working with, both in the hospital and in other realms? Do you find that you're on the same page and in an agreement?
Yeah. And you know what? I think the reason is because all of us, as I said earlier, when 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 none of us know what is the treatment for COVID, everyone listens to everyone. Because with the overwhelming number of cases and deaths and the entire anxiety and worry around these cases, it was not just the patients. As doctors, we were also worried because after a point, we didn't knew what else to do. And you never lie. You're never happy in a situation where you don't know what next to do and you're losing a patient. So at that point, if another doctor comes and tells you, let's try this, you're still open to it. You want to hear that and you want to try everything possible. So I think COVID kind of brought the medical community together. Because the doctors were overworked, the paramedical staff, the nurses, were trying to compensate by working more because they were seeing how people were struggling. Apart from the nurses and the doctors, the helping staff in the hospital was also, pitching in, staying 2-3 hours more. We had gardeners who were sitting and doing paperwork in labs because the work was so overwhelming. So I think rather than having opposing views, what COVID did was kind of bring everyone together because everyone was scared, everyone had the same aim, and everyone needed each other's support, be it mentally, physically, or in terms of the workload.
Right, that's teamwork. I mean, that's the definition of teamwork. And for hospitals, for patients, I mean, just for humanity, I think it requires that kind of ethical practice and connection with everyone, all hands on deck. So in India right now, are the doctors all following ethical procedures? Do you feel that the standard established for ethical practices, can you say something about that, and even in comparison to other countries, if you have some feedback on that?
I mean, I'm not sure what you mean when you say ethical. And but I think where COVID is concerned, the only blanket statement I can make here is throughout the world still there is no clear protocol on how to treat COVID. There are too many ifs and buts. And when there are too many ifs and buts, I think every time it's up to the doctor in terms of the liability of what more can he do to save the patient. are, can there be people who are probably being unethical in terms of their work? I'm sure they are, and I think they are everywhere in the world. I don't think you can fight them. For example, we heard rumors about people selling drugs unethically at higher prices, people doing black marketing, people hoarding drugs and all that. That's I think that's the part of a society, COVID or no COVID. There are always going to be this spoiled black sheeps in the society, and I'm sure they are there everywhere. But I don't think I've ever thought of I've concentrated on them, because I think against them I have seen thousands of people who were working so hard to 12 hours, 18 hours a day. And in fact, I would probably say, when you're comparing especially India with other countries, I think Indian doctors are much, much more tolerant, and also much more kind of, they can stretch themselves more than people in the West. I don't know how to put it, but for example, in India, people were working 18 to 19 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day, sometimes 36 hours a day. I think I think it's only in Indian blood that you can just keep on going and not think about anything else. I think I've worked in foreign countries. It's good. I mean, it's good that they have these protocols that they don't work more than 12 hours a day. For example, this is just an example. In certain countries, they have to go home. But if such rules were applied to India, we would have lost twice the people that we've lost. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, I want to say I applaud all of you for that work, for investing all of those hours, and sometimes possibly without additional pay, without additional applause. So I want to applaud you all for doing that. I think that's amazing. And so,
in fact, I'd like to bring this to your attention, or anyone who's listening. There were a lot of, so people think that doctors have made a lot of money out of COVID. But remember one thing, that most of the fighting force were working doctors, were doctors who were doing services on a salary base. And when the first COVID struck, the salaries were actually deducted because of the lockdown. The country's economy was going down, and doctors were getting half the payment that they were supposed to get. So that's a big misconception if people were thinking that everyone has been just overpaid and doctors have just filled their banks with money. That's really not the case. And forget about the entire apprehension. I mean, when I did my first, so I wrote this one day. It was just getting too overwhelming, and I write sometimes. I wrote my experience about my first COVID surgery, and I had not even gone back in retrospect and thought what I was feeling. And it was after months I realized, oh my God, there were so many thoughts in my head. I mean, I was performing a C-section on a pregnant female, and I might have done 1,000 C-sections till now in my life. But the anxiety that I was feeling, everything was coming back to my mind. Am I going to infect my mother when I go home? Am I going to infect my father when I go home? I had my sister-in-law who was trying to get pregnant. Am I going to infect her? What if I catch COVID? What if I'm going to infect patients with COVID? So immediately after I finished my surgery also, I was like, oh my God, are my gloves on place? Am I wearing? And I had actually forgotten to wear the face shield. So I was so nervous. So, it's a different experience altogether. It was just, yeah.
Wow, I understand. There's so many risks and so much danger involved. Wow, it must be very stressful. But again, I want to applaud you. And I understand what you were saying about the salary. Again, my hats are off. My hat is off to you all. And there's so much respect for the doctors who are willing to put in that extra effort to ensure our safety. And so I know that you are very busy every day. You're out there working, gathering new information, encountering thousands of patients. How do you stay motivated and positive while dealing with all of these factors? How do you get up every day and stay invested in what you do, both on social media and in the workplace?
Strangely, I never thought that this could ever be an answer in my life. But for me, social media has really, really given me that extra push to get up every day in the morning, because I have, there was a week, I'm being honest with you, there was a week, I think the last 25, 30 days back, 7 days, almost 7 days, we have not slept. Like we used to sleep 1 or 2 hours a day. As I said, we used to get so many questions in terms of what to do, what not to do, and we wanted to help everyone. We used to sit and start answering the questions at around 10 o'clock at night, and we used to keep on answering till 4:30. And those were the days when I realized that people were messaging us at 3 a.m. in the night also, because they were scared at 3 a.m. And the moment you answer them, after a day you get a reply that, so everything is fine now, and I'm glad you answered me, and we never had we didn't have a doctor to call at that time, and XY. That was something that really motivated us, and especially me. So one was that, and second, I think being a doctor, I think you're trained to just carry on. I really don't have an answer, a great answer to what was pushing me, but I think, yeah. And also, I was always saying this on social media that, people were going off social media. A lot of my friends, doctors who were doing good work, stopped posting on social media because they were like, I can't deal with this, I can't see how many people are dying and people are suffering and everything. But, I always felt that this is the time when we cannot give up, especially social media, because as I said, the one thing we knew in COVID is how to prevent it. And I think the only way we can still fight COVID is educating people on what to take care around themselves to not get infected. And the best way was social media. People were helping people through social media get beds, get medicines, find doctors, find oxygen. So I used to always tell people that, it was going to be of great help. You don't need to know how many people are dying every day, how many people are getting infected every day. But what you need to know is everything related to COVID in terms of information. Are the vaccines coming up? Can you take a vaccine? How do you book a vaccine? How do you take care? What is the extra thing you can do to probably protect yourself and your family? And that information was gold. And I think, yeah.
Right. I agree with you. The power of social media is incredible. I mean, sharing information, sharing it not only locally, but with the world, and providing access to people who wouldn't otherwise have access to that information. So I'm very thankful to social media and to technology because, I mean, it's truly amazing. So I'm a big fan of Grey's Anatomy, the TV show. I'm a big fan of that show, and I'm an avid watcher of it. I've watched all the seasons, and so I love it. Do you feel that you are currently in a TV show? Do you see yourself as a potential character in that show or a show like that?
Okay, so I can add that. So Grey's Anatomy was one more thing that kind of, I used to see, so I'm a huge fan. I might have seen it multiple times. And I think Grey's Anatomy shows were also one of those shows who, when I was like drained and I couldn't sleep, so I would go and watch a Grey's Anatomy show, or probably a Friends if I was in a much lighter mood. But yeah, so one, Grey's Anatomy was also something that was kind of inspiring to me. And it's been for years. Whether I feel I am in a Grey's Anatomy show, I always feel that. Because
oh wait, this is the interpreter. I missed what you say. The interpreter missed what you said with great.
To the question that he asked, whether I feel I'm in a Grey's Anatomy show, I always feel that, yeah. And in fact, if you see the recent season, if he's following the recent season, I think the season 16 has been all about COVID. Yeah. So, but the problem is, when I see Grey's Anatomy, I get really, really annoyed, because when I see the facility and, like, for example, season 16, what you're seeing, that the kind of masks that they're having, the kind of mics that they're having for communication. If you see they have a pipe that goes behind for ventilation, that's not something that I find here in India. So that's the difference. But yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, I noticed on the show, they were talking about COVID. And so I guess they were probably filming at the same time. So I know that it probably has helped some doctors to be able to watch a show like that and to see their work reflected in a show like that and in their free time. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
In fact, Grey's Anatomy out of COVID, in fact, Grey's Anatomy, I think, has inspired hundreds of doctors. It's a beautiful show.
I agree. Definitely. Definitely. So we are coming up here towards the end of the interview. Do you feel like, is there anything that you want to share with others in terms of vaccines? I mean, are there people that you would say whether maybe they've already had COVID and they've got immunity and they don't need vaccines? Or do you suggest that everyone go ahead and get out there and get the vaccines? What do you have to leave us with in terms of that?
Yeah. So I keep saying this to everyone, and I'm repeating it. I might have said it multiple times here also, that we still don't know how to treat COVID, but we know how to prevent it, and that we know for sure, and that's where lies our true strength, in prevention. And how do you prevent it? Because of course, one is taking care of all the norms, not going out if not required, maintaining social distance, wearing your mask and sanitizing your hand, and now taking a vaccination. Countries like USA, Israel, New Zealand, Australia have proved that vaccinations work. In fact, UK has gone out to say that they might probably announce stop wearing masks by July. So we know how to prevent COVID. And if we know that, if you know how to prevent a disease, why reach a stage where you want to find a treatment, right? So let's just stop the disease at the preventable stage. And the second point I would always want to say is that, there are 1,000 things that are going wrong, but, right now, I think the only way we can fight this is together, through understanding, through education, and through a lot of awareness and help that we can provide each other. We can fight on, what the government did right and wrong. We can vote against the government in the next election, but I don't think this is the time to concentrate on that. I think this is the time to concentrate on saving lives. And it's not just the medical system and the government we're talking about, This has brought I was just thinking, this brought so many other issues together. For example, in a country like India, it's also about education. It's about poverty. People were not wearing masks, not because they didn't want to wear a mask. They were not wearing masks because they didn't have the money to buy a mask. Second, there are a lot of times people get angry when they see the masks below their noses and, on their faces. But, I always tell them that, rather than fighting and getting angry, what you need to understand is that that person is wearing a mask. If he's wearing a mask, that means that he knows that the mask is important, but he probably doesn't know, does the mask go over your mouth or over your nose? It's about educating people. Unfortunately, India have a lot of population that don't have social media. They are not educated. They don't read newspapers. So where are they going to get that information from? So poor people are wearing a mask, but you need to teach them rather than fight with them that you're wearing the mask in the wrong way. So we need to be a little more humble, a little more vigilant, and educate and help around. And I'm sure soon we'll come out of it.
Yes, exactly. Education is key. I think it's most important of all. Sharing knowledge, sharing awareness. We all have to. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to educate the deaf community, and we have to improve access in order for that to happen. Like you mentioned, prevention is key. There was a question that just popped up in my mind. Do you have any deaf patients? Have you worked with deaf patients in the past?
Of course. So, as I said, I also deal with infertility, right? So, I've not worked with a deaf COVID patient with hearing impairment, but I've worked with a lot of patients who the husband and the wife probably have hearing impairment, and they come to us because they're scared that the child might have hearing impairment. So, they want to make sure that there's no genetic reason that is going to be transmitted to children. So I've worked with quite a few. And
Wow.
also, um, there is an association in India. I don't know whether you've heard of it or not, which is called Hear a Million. So Hear a Million is a page that educates people with hearing impairment and all. So in fact, when it comes to COVID, they were in touch with me and we've done workshops with them. And I think the last workshop we did had almost 800 participants throughout the country, and we discussed all their doubts regarding vaccination and everything.
Wow. That's amazing and very motivating. Um, so I did want to mention to you, it's better not to say hearing impaired. It's politically correct to say deaf. Hearing impaired implies that the
Okay.
person needs to be fixed. It is limited. And so we prefer to use the word deaf as it recognizes our culture. So I just wanted to share with you that political correct term. I know that
No, no,
the
no.
doctors in the
I
community.
appreciate it, and yeah, I appreciate it, and I apologize because honestly, I thought it was not right to say deaf, and you need to say hearing impairment. So thank you.
Yes. No, thank you. It's okay. It's no problem. It's no problem. I mean, it's like we just are talking about. Education is important for everyone. And so, just like you educate people to use masks, we educate people on the correct term that we prefer to use. So, education is key, right? So, we have just a couple of minutes left before we close. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers today that are feeling paranoid about a third wave, are feeling concerned about the lockdown that we're currently under until June 15th? Do you have any calming words to share with the people who are listening today who are worried about their kids and worried about them not being able to go out, or just any comments that you
Yeah.
have for us in general?
So regarding COVID, I think we have enough experience to know that one is that we need to get this, especially for a lot of countries and a lot of people, we need to get this thing out of their head that we get on the defensive mode when it comes to COVID. For example, if you're having a little bit of fever, if you're having, that little bit of sore throat or body ache, our first reaction is, oh, that's not COVID, everything cannot be COVID. But, I would like to tell everyone that today, everything has to be considered COVID. You know, what can happen is probably you're going to get a test and it's going to come negative. Well, good, celebrate that. But let's not go to a decision where you ignore your initial symptoms and which leads to a more severity of the disease. Because one thing we know for sure that if you miss that initial 5 to 7 days of diagnosis and treated COVID, then it becomes very difficult to treat. Any of these drugs treatment that we're talking about works best in the first week or first 10 days of the disease. So if you are spending like 5 to 6 days of the disease ignoring your symptoms, you are causing harm to yourself. Secondly, you're infecting 10 other people. You know, it's all right if you don't want to get tested, but at least isolate yourself. You know, and apart from that, talking about vaccination, is people always think about vaccination in terms of protecting themselves. But as doctors, as scientists, we know that vaccination is not only about protecting yourself, but vaccinated people tend to spread the virus also in a much, much lower intensity. So when you get vaccinated, you're just not protecting yourself, you're protecting like hundreds of people around you because you're not going to spread the disease. So when a lot of because pregnant women are still not allowed to take vaccine in India, they ask us, they always ask me that, doc, what do we do? We're not allowed to take a vaccine. So I said, what you can do is ask everyone around you to take a vaccine. So you're automatically protected. Right.
Right, right, right. I understand completely. Yeah, we have to protect pregnant women. That's important. And like you said, that her family and friends around her can do so much by protecting her with their own vaccines. I do want to ask a personal question. You work with a lot of COVID patients, but in terms of your family, are they worried about you possibly catching COVID while you're working in hospitals, or?
Always. So So when I decided to start giving my services in COVID, or starting this COVID watch specifically, uh, I mean, my parents were not saying no, because they knew that once I'd set my mind on something, I'm not going to listen to them. But a lot of my friends were worried. They were like, "Are you mad? Why do you want to do this?" Because for the longest period of time, I'd avoided getting infected with COVID or getting exposed to COVID, because I used to work in a non-COVID hospital. We had decreased our work and everything. So everyone was really scared, and I was scared, honestly speaking. For I think 10 days, I used to come from the hospital and I used to enter through the back door, and I used to come in my room and I used to lock myself up. I have not had breakfast, dinner, lunch with any of my family members. I used to ask them to deliver my food or whatever things to my room. I used to eat alone. And that's why I had a lot of time to make videos on social media, because I was not talking to anyone else. So I was sitting in my room, working in the hospital, coming to the room and just isolating myself. So yeah, I was scared. And then slowly I got the hang of thing, or probably we got more confident. Also, I always, I had a lot of COVID-like symptoms in the first wave, when India did not even have tests of COVID. So it was like last March or April. I had got this 5 to 6 days where I felt really weird, and I was having little bit of breathing difficulty. I was having a lot of fever and body ache. So, but at that time, India did not have tests for COVID. It used to only happen in Pune. So we used to just do a CT scan. Luckily, my CT scan had come normal. So I treated myself with COVID drugs at whatever was available at that time. I remdesivir and all these drugs were not available at that time. And I isolated myself for like a week to 10 days, and I think a week, and I was fine. So I would like to believe that that was the time I was infected with COVID, and probably I recovered, but I would never know. And then probably we got vaccinated, because doctors were vaccinated very early on. And a lot of people, as you were saying, again, that is something I would like to say. A lot of people keep on asking us that, which vaccine to take? Is Covishield safe? Is Covaxin safe? Is this safe? Is that safe? What is the data saying? And, I would like to say that the majority of the doctors in the country took vaccine in January, where we didn't even know what the vaccine was, what was the data, or how safe it was. So all of us have been jabbed with Covishield long time back, and we are all doing fine, hopefully, till now. So, if we've shown that trust, I think the public can show the trust, masses can show the trust.
Right, I understand that. I'm sure also your family is probably very proud of you. And I want to, thank you so much for making a big difference in our lives and sharing this information. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you so much for coming today to the show and sharing your journey. And I want to also thank Kelly, the interpreter, for interpreting for us today. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We've got 1 or 2 minutes left. So if you could for this last question, if you could describe yourself in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
I think I'm very motivated and determined. I think yeah.
Perfect. Beautiful.
And probably somewhere I realized I have a sense of some sense of social service. Yeah. So I think that's the 3 words.
Great. Well, thank you again so much, Doctor, for coming today to the show, and thank you, Kelly, for interpreting for us. For both of you dedicating an hour of your time this morning and this evening, depending on where you are. And I hope that this show has benefited everyone that came to watch today. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for Vaibhav and Kelly. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to both of you, and I had fun. It was kind of a therapy session for me also, retrospectively thinking about a lot of things.
No, yeah. So it's a benefit for everybody. So yes, and
take care, guys. Take care.
I'm happy to be your therapist for today. Thank you.
Bye.